Yeah, that's right. You're getting closer to everything. Half the time people are walking up with either a red or a green folder, so I'm guessing who's going where.
Well, you can't get in on the main door.
No, so they have, somebody's in the library and they're having to go to church door, or not the church door, whatever.
On that side.
Maybe by the chapel, and then there's something going on over in the, or Palatoli Center. And then they want the choir to go down that door to go through the band room, but after half of them came through this way, so now we're gonna see how many people are walking through. We're gonna wing it. We'll be good. All right. Welcome back. We'll start our third session here with our opening prayer. This prayer is by RCIA candidate, required down the sidewalk, go through that door to the left. Caitlin wrote this at the end of the year. We were having the RCIA candidates write their own prayers, and she wrote this one, so we're going to say this morning. It's a start. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Saint, pray for us to remember you, not only as the finder of lost things, but as the gentle guide for our lost faith. Be our map and lead us to see what is lost, so we may find ourselves again in Him. Steer us back to the Lord, and lead us straight from His feet. Pray for us when His nearness feels far, that we may still trust in His love in quiet adoration. Pray for us to reach for God when we feel like something is missing in our lives, rather than the fleeting comforts of this world. May He restore us to all things that deliver us to Him. Amen.
Amen. It's a great prayer. This is the best prayer we've had all these years. This is good. I thought it was wonderful, so we're going to use it today. I'm probably going to use another one after this class is done, so we'll see. All right, the reading today pertains to everything we're going to do for the next 3 weeks. If this one doesn't strike a chord, I don't think anything does. All right, the young rich man. Now someone approached him and said, "Teacher, what good must I do to gain eternal life?" He answered him, "Why do you ask me about the good? There is only one who is good. If you wish to enter into life, keep the commandments." He asked him, "Which ones?" And Jesus replied, "You shall not kill. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. Honor your father and your mother, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself." The young man said to him, "All of these I have observed. What do I still lack?" Jesus said to him, "If you wish to be perfect, go sell what you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." When the young man heard this statement, he went away sad, for he had many possessions. How's that for setting the tone for this class, right? This one and the other one, what was it? The more you have, the more is expected. The less you have, the less you're going to get or something. That one scares me even more than this one. It's like, so when you get these blessings, it's like, what are you going to do with them? So, we're going to talk about, this third session is my favorite one of the 5 that we're going to do, because this is the session where we're going to start talking about the roadmap. And I'm going to have a big handout for you, so what's in your handouts is, you'll see it come up again, all right? But I'm going to give you a bigger version of it. Anyway, we're going to talk about the roadmap, and we're going to talk about the beginning of the roadmap, because almost everybody in this room is going to be in the beginning of the roadmap. And we're going to talk why. Then next session, it's like, okay, if you want to be like this rich young man, but you're going to be willing to get rid of your stuff, we're going to talk about what stuff that is. Where could you go? Where does it take you? To me, this is the best part about what St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross wrote. It's really neat stuff, and we'll talk about the differences between the two. So that's where we're going today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a real short synopsis of what this day is going to be like next week, because it has to lead into the rooms that we're going to be talking about. All right, so last session we talked about spirituality, right? We were talking about how happiness tied to spirituality. First off, my first question for you is, what is spirituality? We had 2 days of it already. What is spirituality? If you had to tell somebody, one of your kids came up and started talking to you, neighbor comes over, and they sit there and go, well, you're a real spiritual person. And then the subject of spirituality came up. What would you tell somebody? Wow.
Your relationship with God.
Okay.
I would say it's how your heart feels and acts.
Okay. How your heart feels?
What'd she say?
How your heart feels?
Thank you.
The actions you take? Okay.
It's your Zoe.
It's your Zoe. But yeah, it's about your Zoe. How do you make your Zoe grow, right?
Or where your soul and spirit meet.
Yes? Okay.
Having a good prayer life.
Good prayer life gets you everywhere, yes. We're going to talk about that in detail today. So, what you value, and how do you know what you value? Because are you going to try to integrate into everything else, make something bigger, learn virtues, help contribute to other people? Or are you going to be disintegrating, being selfish, and just thinking about you? Spirituality is you get to make that choice. Are you going to grow, or are you going to just be selfish? Right? And we're talking about the Zoe and stuff. That's how the Zoe grows. If you're going integrating versus that, and your heart, your actions tell you what your spirituality is. So that's the best part of it. You're going to get feedback all the time if you're aware that that's feedback. Right? Okay, good. How many people actually tried to do the humility index? Oh, good. That's better than I thought I was going to get. How did it make you feel when you were going through it? I don't want to know your score. What did you think? Give me some feedback on it. Surprisingly different than what you thought, okay?
I was surprised at some things I felt good about,
Okay.
and then other things, oh, I'm not so.
Not so good at other things, yeah? Anybody else did it?
It's kind of humble trying to rate yourself. Yeah,
It is. It's very humbling to do something like that, because now you got to. But remember what humility is. It's all about knowing your true self. So when you look at that stuff, it's like, yeah, I'm not very good at this. Oh, I'm better at this. No, I'm not. But you become more true. It becomes true. This is what's about you, right? And the only way you can advance upstairs to God is you have to be humble. And that's why that reading thing, that rating thing is so good. Just go look at it and sit there and say, where do I need to work on stuff? Because when you see some of the things, the criteria for moving through the rooms, I think that the humility thing will strike you even more. If you know your true self, or you think you know your true self a little bit better from that rating system, now you can put a game plan together. So what do you want to do? Okay. Did you think about what you would do to improve your rating? Kind of like an idea, hey, I'm not very good at this. I need to figure out how to do something different. I think the hardest, the funniest thing about humility that I see, every time I sit there and I think about, I should do this better. I should be more worried about everybody else and how do I help them and so forth and so on. And as soon as you sit there and say, hey, I'm starting to become humble, you just lost it. You just lost humility altogether, because as soon as you proclaim you're humble, you're not. Right?
And a lot of the words, like I looked up first, I Googled the word because I thought in my head I knew what it was.
Good.
But then when I read the definition, there were certain words that would stand out. And I was like, no, I'm not that. Meanwhile, my rating was high, and then I read the definition, I'm like, no, I'm down a little bit from that.
Perfect true self stuff. It's a reflection thing. You're looking in the mirror and you're saying, well, how well am I doing here, right? That's what the whole idea is. Because that's going to take us there. How many people read the first 3 chapters of Genesis? All right. Your perception of it. We've been talking about it for the first 2 days. What do you guys think? Do you remember what the story was about, or did you get more out of it this reading?
I've gotten a lot out of it. I think right off the bat when you just read verse 1.
Okay.
You just started verse 1 and let's talk about where it got you.
We could spend a 5-day session on just those 3 chapters. You really could. Anybody else? What did you get out of it? We've been talking about some of it anyway, so I wanted you to make sure you read it.
It was good to go over it again, because it's been a while since I've read that.
Good. I mean, and Cradle Catholics, I'm a Cradle Catholic. I mean, I heard that story a long time ago, and then when we started reading it for RCIA, it's like, remember that part. Okay.
Well, it's such a simple story, but there's just so many facets to it. Like, you just have more questions every time you read it. Well, what
Absolutely.
if this happened, or what if that happened, or did he mean this, or like, I don't know.
And I think that's the best part was when I went to the seminary, I just wanted to learn some more stuff to teach at RCIA. But they broke open all this stuff, and in every single class, somebody said, why didn't somebody tell us that before? Why didn't somebody tell us that before? And the answer that the professors would sit there and say is, you probably heard it before, but you weren't ready for it. Because wherever you are in your spirituality, you might have heard something and it meant something different to you. Now that you've grown in your spirituality, you hear it again, it means something different. All right? So the whole idea is when you're reading this stuff, every time you read something in the Bible, you get something different out of it because of where you are on this journey of your spirituality. Okay, I'm going to tell you, my favorite part in the whole thing is the end of the chapter of 3. When he kicked them out of the garden and he put this cherubim at the door and he's had this swirling sword that nobody could get through. To me, the vision of that, the imaginary vision I have of that going on was like, okay, nobody's coming in now. And we got booted out. And that kind of summarized the 3 chapters for me. So I hope you read it. I hope you saw something different. We'll talk more about it as we go through each of these sessions going forward. But I wanted you to read it to kind of set the tone for where we're going to go today.
It made me more aware this time when I read it, why we have to die.
Okay. I hope that what we can do is tie this stuff together. This roadmap to me is really impressive. But we're going to talk about some of the barriers that they've had along the way. Okay. Talked about what is spirituality. He said Zoe shrinks, Joey grows. The transcendent desires are what makes spirituality work. Remember, we had truth, beauty, love, what was the other one? Justice, and home and being. All right, we're going to talk about those 5 in a little less detail, but we're going to add one to that grouping, which is called faith. And you're going to hear that more and more and more as we progress through all the rooms. So those transcendent desires, remember what those are. Transcendent desires are inherent in us. When I'm telling you something, it sounds like truth, right? But deep down inside, you know there's probably more truth to it out there than I'm not telling you. Basically because I don't know everything, right? None of it, nobody does. So how do you know there's a gap? Because every one of us is made in Christ, in God's image and likeness, right? So there's a perfect scale out there. And so when somebody's telling you something, you know it falls short because you have this perfect scale to compare it against. That's what transcendent desires are. There's something beyond us that gives us something to ground us against. So that's the big thing about it. Here are phrases that help build the first grouping of rooms we're going to go through. We are social animals needing each other to survive and thrive. Socrates said that way back when. Right? We were created to love and be loved. God is love and love craves unity. Bishop Sheen said that over and over and over. So I stole it from Socrates and Bishop Sheen. I heard those were really good. How do you feel? How do you feel your disease? What's in your heart? How do you act? The disease is, you know there's this disease. There could be something better out there. Okay, so when we break open this roadmap, it's really cool because it's sitting there saying, hey, here's the next step you need to think about. But your true self sits there and says, what step are you on? So we're going to show you the roadmap, and everybody's going to be a different step. Or you could be on the same step, but in different categories of are you going up or are you going backwards? All right? And John of the Cross and Teresa of Avila are very good at describing this stuff. We talked about the environment, your maturity. We talked about all this stuff last time. Your maturity. Are you dependent? Are you independent? Or are you interdependent? Remember, dependent is a little kid. They depend on everything. Independent is the teenager that drives you crazy. Interdependent are people that work together to try to make something happen, which means they don't become politicians. Anyway, are you motivated or demotivated by your environment? That Maslow's hierarchy, right? Are you going to become something more, or are you going to be selfish, trying to take care of yourself and protect yourself? What choices of happiness dominates your life? Remember we talked about the 4 levels of happiness. Pleasure was number 1. Everybody wants to have that. I'm eating ice cream after dinner. I had it today, right? On a weekend, oh, that Imperial IPA, it tastes wonderful. That's my pleasures. That's what I get out of it. But it's very short-lived. The next level up is success. Ego comparative, they call it. You're comparing your success against other people. Win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. Am I better than everybody else or am I not? The third one is about leaving a legacy, and the fourth one is about sitting there and working in the transcendent, which is transcendent life. How do you grow to the point where you're looking beyond that? The reason I bring up happiness all the time is you get to pick what dominant group you want to stay in. You could stay in pleasure all your whole life. But if you stay in pleasure your whole life, every time you get, like if I had ice cream every single day, if I want to get the same level of pleasure, tomorrow I've got to have a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And before you know it, I'm getting a half gallon every day, right? Which isn't going to be healthy, and I'm not going to feel good about it, right? So you lose the pleasure to do that. Anyway, you get to pick which dominant level you want to be in. 70% of the people in the world, in the United States especially, are in the ego comparative or pleasure area. They're not in the legacy and transcendent. Which explains why there's gambling, why there's all the sports, how many millions and billions of dollars are going into sports now and so forth. Because everybody's comparing who wins and loses all the time. Okay, pride versus humility. What do you want? What are your desires? How do you strive toward the truth? Humility is all about learning what's true about you. What is the truth about me so that I can figure out how to grow? Okay? The biggest question when you do all that stuff is, do you trust God? Do you trust anybody? Or is it about you taking care of you and you're good with that? Okay, you're going to see some of the stuff that we're going to talk about with where we're going with this stuff. Okay. What gets in the way? We watch the Halloween tree. Every year we watch the Halloween tree. Everybody ever watched Ray Bradbury? It's a book he wrote. It's about the Halloween trees. It talks about the Halloween over all the centuries and how it works. It's really a good DVD, really good book. Anyway, the whole thing comes down. Halloween's all about looking death in the eye and saying, okay, you don't have anything on us. That's what it comes down to. If you can look death in the eye, you don't have to fear it anymore, it's good. So Halloween helps people think about their death and say, no, we can beat this, we can beat this. Now it's all about ego, win or lose, right? Okay, so knowing what you know today, reflecting on your life led so far, what does heaven look like for you right now? I brought up heaven with, like, everybody thinks like Bing Crosby or Bob Hope or playing golf with God up in heaven, right? Is that what heaven looks like for you? What does heaven look like for you?
So I watch on YouTube, like, people who have near-death experiences,
Okay.
and they all basically have the same thing, and they show videos and the light and the orbs and the people, so in my mind, like,
That's what
that's
heaven looks
it,
like.
that's
Okay.
like how it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think of peace.
okay. So there won't be any wars anymore and stuff?
Yeah, just peaceful, beautiful.
Okay, peaceful, beautiful,
Just being in
okay.
the presence of God.
Okay? You're going to hear some of that too. That's part of the baseline, knowing your truth about yourself. What do you think heaven looks like? If you think heaven's going to be like it is right here, and you're going to be in control of what you're doing, I think you're in for a rude awakening. All right? And that may be what your vision is, but I think it's based upon really early perceptions of stuff. Because heaven is based upon a lot of better stuff. And the more spiritual books you read, more of the saints, the doctors of the church especially, you'll start to understand that heaven's a little different than that. And I think Teresa and John of the Cross are going to give us some of those things. So, if you were to die tonight, where do you believe you would end up? What would be the results of your judgment? Now, you just did that humility thing, which is tied into this slide.
Purgatory.
Purgatory, okay.
Nope. It's not purgatory. It's the penalty box.
The penalty.
It's a softer term.
That's the men's Bible study of saying it's not going to be that bad. Penalty box. People that don't believe in God, the reason their anxiety and depression and so forth is high is it's like they're going to die. It's poof, I'm gone. And that's their judgment. They think that it's over with. So that if you don't believe in anything, what happens to your existence? You don't have a non-existence there. And that anxiety takes over and takes over. What are you going to do about it? Now don't get me wrong. There is the psychological anxiety that takes over. But if you don't believe in God and you have that, you just make it worse. Because you have nothing to live for. Right? So you fight and you fight and you fight all the time. If you are very selfish, it's like, I don't have a chance to get out of hell. You know, you have a chance to get out yet. That means you're still, God hasn't given up on you if you think that's what's going to happen. You know it, you're ready to go. Purgatory is for everybody that is not getting into the room 6 and 7. And you'll know what that means in a few minutes. And anybody think they have a direct shot to heaven right now? Okay, that's impressive. So that's good. Because the steps to get there, what the saints talk about is that there's a heaven and there's levels of heaven that people go to. All right? And one of the statements that Father Wuest said, Bishop Wuest now, he said there and said over and over, when you die and you get to go and experience heaven, it doesn't end and it's eternally getting better and better and better and better through time. But time doesn't exist. And that blows our mind human-wise.
Just a real quick story of what happened to me this weekend. So I have a friend who unfortunately is dying from cancer. And he, for some reason, all of a sudden, he's never been very religious, but all of a sudden he wants to have these conversations about, spirituality and God and whatever. So he was at our house. We brought him over to visit with Robin for a bit. And he started to talk to me about it, and how are you? And just even without, I said, well, I don't want to die today, but I'm at peace because I know I'm going to someplace better. I said, it just, what came out of me is I'm looking forward to seeing the face of God.
Okay.
And he looked at me and said, well, that's a pretty damn bold statement. And then, so I was like, is it? Because then I think when you say heaven, then you go back to that humility thing. And if I'm really, truly humble, and I say, well, at some point, maybe I'm going to the penalty box, and then I'm going to go to heaven. I said, well, that's what I'm hoping for, or working towards. But it was the weirdest thing for him to, I never heard anybody say something like that. It just like, I didn't know what to respond to.
Mortality is the thing that gets us thinking about our death more than anything, right? I mean,
yes.
The older we get, the more you think, hey,
Yes.
One of the things we talk about in this Bible study, we're basking in the glow of the exit sign, I mean, we got an old group of guys. And it makes you think about, what have I done with my life, right?
Yes.
If there's no creator, what's the purpose of life?
Yeah, and it comes back to this, if you don't believe in anything, poof, you're gone, it scares you a lot more. So it comes back to that thing, how much do you trust God? How much do you love God? How much have you loved those people around you, or have you been very selfish, which is your spirituality? And based upon that, you're going to see this cool roadmap. All right. Heaven, just for the record, heaven is union with God. I'm sure you've heard that several times, and you're going to see how the saints define that. That's really some interesting stuff. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes before I go to the next slide. Close your eyes, and I'm going to read a few things. First off, I want you to think this is going to be about this life in comparison to what heaven could look like. First off, God is perfect. You are imperfect. He wants to make you perfect. How does that sound? Nice, right? For all things on earth and heaven, compared to God, are nothing. Think about all that happens in the earth and in the sky and the universe. And all of that is nothing to God. All being in creation, compared with the infinite being of God, is nothing. So I want you to think about the most beautiful experience you've ever had. Something you felt like, this is what I want for heaven. What was the experience? Think about it. Could be this wonderful time with your family on the beach. It could be the most wonderful celebration you've ever seen. Think about that for a second. Everything in that scene is deformity compared to the infinite beauty of God. Everything that you had in that wonderful experience is nothing. It's awful. It's disgusting compared to what God has to give you. All right? The greatest wisdom in the world and human ability is ignorance compared to the infinite wisdom of God. So everybody that thinks they know everything and have learned everything and all this stuff with AI is worthless compared to God. It's ignorance. We know nothing. Your greatest delights and pleasures in the whole world are extreme affliction, torment, and bitterness compared to those delights that are God. To enter into union with God, your soul has no capacity for being enlightened and possessed by the pure and simple light of God. You are not ready to see God. The truth about it. You're not ready to see God. So it is, this is a quote from John of the Cross. It is supremely ignorant for the soul to think it will be able to pass to the highest state of union with God if void not the desire of all things, natural and supernatural. So, all right, open your eyes. Everything you think about, God makes that look like it's awful. Everything you can consider as being, I'm smart, I'm really good at this, I'm good. It's nothing compared to what God has. That's where we're going to try to get to. And how do you do that? The saints have the steps how to get there. But everything we're going to talk about in these next 3 days is all about, think about God in those terms. Everything you're doing today, even though it might be fun, it might be great, it might be one of the best times you've ever had, is putrid compared to what God has to offer you. How's that for a description? It's hard to comprehend that, right? And you sit there and think, that's not true. Those are all, most of those quotes I read you were from St. John of the Cross in his book.
To me, it sounds like it's like so unhappy.
It does, but I think what he's trying to do is, we have that this human body that we have is torture to us. It's this thing that was given to us, and what we do is, you're going to see, sin makes us want to feed the beast, and you have to tame the beast. You have an option. Either you tame the beast, or the beast tames you. And if you think of God being this wonderful thing, this wonderful being, this wonderful place to get to, maybe it's worth taming the beast. Because if you don't tame the beast, you're not going to see God. And that's the whole idea of those first 3 chapters of Genesis. What do? They fed the beast, literally. And they fell away, and they gave us all these beasts, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. Now, I just wanted to set the stage for that, because to me, when you read that kind of stuff, it kind of puts things in perspective of why do we want to go through this. All right. Here are the 3 books that I use the most for this whole session. There's a lot of other ones. There's Faustina. I can't even think of all of them anymore. Anyway, there's 3 books by John of the Cross that are really good. The Descent of Mount Carmel is wonderful. He has another book. It's The Dark Night of the Soul. It's a great book as well. Teresa of Avila wrote The Interior Castle. These 2, if you look at the dates, they were contemporaries. Teresa of Avila was in the midst of trying to get the Carmelite order to be decalced. All right, what that means is that she sat there and said, look, our order has gotten way out of hand. We don't worry about prayer. We don't worry about poverty anymore. We were all commissioned to be under poverty and under prayer all the time. So she was trying to fix all this stuff. John of the Cross was actually a bishop in one area, and she came over to the Carmelite order and helped them to reorganize this stuff. He also tried to reorganize the priests that were working with him, the monks and so forth, and they got really pissed off at him. All right? Such that couple of them took him and put him in prison for a year in this house. And somebody would come out to feed him. Sometimes they wouldn't. They'd forget about him. And he was there for about a year. And that's where he wrote, we're going to give you the description of that next week. But he wrote a poem about his experience, and he wrote what the poem means in total detail, which is this book, The Descent of Mount Carmel. How do you get to God? Little Talks with God is from St. Catherine of Siena. She's one of my favorite saints. She had discussions with God the Father. And when she would have those discussions, she would go into a trance and just have this discussion. And all the nuns would be scribes writing down what she was saying the whole time. And then when she got all done, she would go through and edit the whole thing and say, okay, this is what I heard, this is what you guys wrote it down wrong, whatever. She fixed it all. And that book is from her on that discussion. I'm going to give you something to read from that today. So when you leave, you're going to be able to read part of it. But their experience are what starts to feed what we're going to be talking about as we go through this stuff. Okay? All right. Here's the Catechism of the Catholic Church. All right? On number 2013, it says, all Christians in any state or walk of life are called to the fullness of Christian life and to the perfection of charity. All are called to holiness. Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. That sounds easy, right? Holiness, perfect. Yeah, we can do all that, right? 2014 is an interesting one. Spiritual progress tends toward an even more intimate union with Christ. I put the underline underneath there, all right? This union is called mystical because it participates in the mystery of Christ through the sacraments, the holy mysteries. So the sacraments are his mysteries coming at us. And we look at it as, oh, that's a nice piece of bread. Right? Oh, there's the holy water. That's kind of cool. You know, we treat him with reverence, but we have this aloofness to it, right? And in him, in the mystery of the Holy Trinity, God calls us all to this intimate union with him, even if the special graces or extraordinary signs of this mystical life are granted only to some for the sake of manifesting the gratuitous gift given to all. So mysticism is all about having an experience with God somehow. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It could be locutions, which are just God talking to you. Or you can have these consolations, right, where you're sitting there and you see something very holy. All right? And those could be, but they're very rare. They don't happen to everybody. So we trust people that have had these experiences, and we call them mystical. All right? Christian mysticism is where you enter into God's world. A mystic is someone, it's a select few, who experiences a mystery of the divine. Then they try to understand this gift so to articulate the mystery and share it to everybody. It's communal. Mystical behavior, Christian mysticism is communal. It's not about me and Jesus. So if you're looking for a me and Jesus moment, you're in the wrong place. Because this is about, if you're having a mystical experience, it's about God using you to get to everybody else. Because it's all about love God and love your neighbor, right? God doesn't forget either one of those two. So this is a communal thing. Mysticism against every form of self-interest and self-will. God is near and personal. We're invited to be a Christian mystic. And in the liturgy, which is what we're going to talk about in 2 weeks, we encounter the presence of the living God. Does it feel like that? That wonderful, awesome God? Does liturgy feel like that? We're going to talk about what we learned from this class and what it's supposed to look like in the liturgy and see how we can do maybe a little bit better. All right? Spiritual consolations. Okay. Spiritual consolations are transcendent experiences. There's something outside of them. Right? God gives the consolation strength in us and draws nearer to himself. He also allows desolations. So what happens is if somebody has a consolation, first thing they do is they get very excited. Oh, God's talking to me. It was the most wonderful feeling in the world. Then what they want is they want more consolation because that felt so good. I want more of this. I want more of this. What does that sound like for happiness? Pleasure, right? Give me more, give me more, give me more, right? And when a soul starts to get that way, God will give desolations where they get nothing. Nothing goes well for them. Things happen badly. It's God trying to get their attention, saying, hey, come on back in. You went too far with this. All right? So there's consolations and desolations. He uses both to help. He's a great performance manager. I mean, he knows how to change behaviors really, really well. The proper response to a spiritual consolation is just gratitude. It's an awe moment to give something you cannot initiate. It comes from God. And He will do it on His timetable through whoever He's going to do it for you. It's just kind of neat. When you hear about consolations, it's really kind of a cool thing. We talked about spirituality. It's the discovery of true self. Love is the reason for our existence, not about discovering your own feelings. All right? It's not love of self. It's the love of others. But communicating is successful to others if desires and attachments get in the way. Why? Desires and attachments get in the way because you think about the beast. I don't feel good today. This part of me hurts. And when it starts feeling that way, you think about you and you forget about the rest of the world. Or, geez, I'm going to go to that Browns game and I'm going to watch them win the best game they've ever had. First off, that's a dream. But think of all the people that paint their faces. I used to do that when the Browns were good way back in the 90s. All right, I painted my face and stuff. It was crazy. Now I could care less. It's like, what happened? Its desires and attachments are different. When they left for Baltimore, I realized it was just a business, and I gave up on them. And I said, they're kind of entertaining now, but all I did is get mad because it's like, we have the worst owner in the world, and it just anyway. When you look at all this true self stuff, it's the hard stuff. It requires us to change, and people resist change. So when you're going through this spiritual growth, that's the hardest part for everybody is how do you actually change to get where you want to go? And that's what spirituality is about. Are you going to become something more or not?
Yeah.
All right.
Questions. We go back to slide
This one?
Yeah, so when we were talking about the communication, and not talking to us and us wanting more of that, what, is it just at a different level, or what is the difference between that level of communication of God talking to us and that moment of like, are you listening?
Right.
Is that just the difference of a level? Because
He's talking, he'll get, a consolation and a locution are basically different. You know it's something outside of you talking to you. When you're praying and you're starting to have a really good feeling about stuff, or you're in Mass and it's like something struck you, this is pretty cool. It's God getting your attention, but it's not necessarily to the level of consolations, locutions, and stuff.
okay.
I'll tell you a story. I was going to save this for next week, but Mother Teresa's story is one of the coolest ones. Father was when he was in seminary, he was a teacher there. He went over to help Mother Teresa over in India. And he was over there helping her. He would lead Mass with her and all the nuns and stuff, and her whole group. And it was becoming very much the fad. People would show up, I'm going to help Mother Teresa. So she was already catching on in the world, right? And she said this really rich lady showed up one day, and she wants to help out with helping the people of India. And she was there no longer than one day. She went over to see Mother Teresa and said, hey, no, this isn't for me. I can't do this. I want to leave. Because I guess you sign up to be there for a week or two when you sign up to go. And Mother Teresa said, well, you can't leave. She looked at her like, I can leave anytime I want. No. You can leave when you see the face of Jesus. She had no clue what she was talking about. So she goes through, and this lady was there, and she's helping, and she's just doing her chores, and she's really hating it. One day, Mother Teresa comes over to her and says, hey, we got this guy from the gutter in the street. He's in bed. He's going to die in the next 12 hours. You sit with him and just take care of him. Just talk to him, make him feel like he's a real human before he dies. So she did. About 8 hours later, she came back over to Mother Teresa with this glow on her face. And Mother Teresa, without her saying a word, Mother Teresa looked at her and said, you can go now. Because of what she was doing and caring for that man on the street, that woman saw the face of Jesus in that person. So that's when Father Roos was over there. So he saw this illustration. He's telling us this story and thinks, okay, so I'm in class, and I sat there and said, that's one of the coolest things. And if that's one of the mild consolations that you can get in life, and Mother Teresa obviously knew that because she told everybody, you can't leave it till you see Jesus. I sat there and said, okay, maybe I can see the face of Jesus somewhere. And I started praying for it. I really like to see the face of Jesus. And I started helping people, right? Okay, so fast forward 2 years. I'm still taking classes, no Jesus anywhere, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm working, and I'm having it was like a day like day, well, it was raining on a day like this. It was pouring rain, it's like 40, 45 degrees, and I have to walk about a half mile to get out to the building I was responsible for. And I'm walking out there, and I have to walk across where all the trucks, the semi-trucks pack in to the loading dock, and you load them all up. And I have to wait for them, this truck is backing up. And we had this system where you can't go into the parking lot until he's parked. So he stops, he parks, I open the gate, I go walking over, and this truck driver is getting out of his truck, and he looks down at me. And I just like, his face was just weird. And he said, you're going to have a good day. And I did. I went from this, I need the world's out against me, I was having a terrible day time. I don't even know what I did the rest of the day. I saw something in that face, and I thought, maybe I got the face of Jesus, because it felt like something way, way transcendent. So pray. By helping somebody else, you could pray to get that consolation. Because Mother Teresa said, look and you'll see it if you're helping other people. And to me, that was a wonderful experience. And when you see something like that, it's like anybody sits there and tells you you don't know God doesn't exist, they're wrong. One thing like that. I mean, even the discussion, when you have a really good discussion with Jesus in Mass, or God in Mass, and you hear something really wonderful, He's talking to you. It may not have sounded like Him, but it's like inside of you. You know something special is happening. That's God talking to you. So how could God not exist if that comes to you, right? It's the graces coming in. So you have to be open to the consolations. When you are, then you're ready. He'll get you when He wants you. By the way, I've never ever seen it again, and I don't necessarily want to, because I don't want us just have seen Jesus in everybody's face all the time, because that I'll live for that rather than doing stuff I should be doing, right? All right? So that's what the consolations are to the saints too. The saints sit there and say, that's not really what you want to be doing. Okay, so here's the roadmap. You ready? All right. So St. Teresa was writing to her nuns about making changes. And she writes about the 7 rooms of the interior castle. The interior castle number 7 is where union with God. So you work through the rooms, they call them mansions. The mansions through here to get to the interior castle. That's what she's worried about, trying to teach all the nuns there. St. John of the Cross, the 2 books that I have for him, right? He sits there and he tells you, here's the dark night of the senses and here's the dark night of the spirit. That's where everything happens. He supports what St. Teresa of Avila was talking about the steps to get there. But he worries about all the details of what the dark night of the senses and dark night of the soul are about. So that's the difference between the two. So I'm going to mix these two together as we go through each step. All right? All right. The castle from St. Teresa isn't this diagram. I couldn't make a crystal. She has this huge crystal that is the soul. And there are 7 mansions to get to the center. God resides in the center of this crystal. All right? It's a clear crystal. That's how she views it. And you have to work your way into the middle. When people are on the outside of this crystal, what do they want to do? They want to polish it, make it look good, and sell it for a lot of money. Right? When we see something, really nice jewel or something, that's what people do. They make it look good so they can make more money off of it. I have something special, I have something special. She's saying, no, that's the soul. Your soul is where God resides and you have to get there. So can you worry about doing something other than just the surface of it? The quote by St. Teresa is, the soul is God's paradise being made by God for God. All right? The soul is God's paradise being made by God for God.
I'm sorry, my husband's just taken to the hospital. So
Oh, I'm sorry.
he needs a lot to leave.
Oh, no. Okay, so everybody, this is gonna get taped, so I mean, you can watch it if you me, I hope he's okay.
He was in the 8th letter this weekend, and they sent him home without his name.
What is his,
Connecticut.
what is his first name?
His name is Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, okay.
I'm so sorry.
Will be another perhaps. All right, this sets a sober statement, right? Okay. All right. The whole idea that St. Teresa's talking about here is heaven is just like this crystal, this diamond, this whatever you want to call this wonderful crystal she talks about. Just like heaven has many mansions, she said there's many mansions to get to the center where God is at. St. Teresa had many consolations because she was in the process of trying to change the other nuns' behavior. So God was directing her on what to do. St. Teresa said for this whole journey from the outside to the interior castle, the main thing that's the most important thing to do is pure obedience. Pure obedience to get to the center. That means obedience to those people that are superiors, they're in charge of something. Romans 13 sits there and says, God puts people in authority. Obey them. I mean, that's basically the gist of it. You can't take away from anybody in authority because God allowed them to get there. And so you should pay attention and be obedient. Sister Teresa, St. Teresa, let's try it again, sat there and said that obedience makes everything easy. Your spiritual life becomes easy when you're obedient. Just do what you're supposed to do by somebody that's telling you something better. I approached Father Tim like multiple times about doing this with RCIA at the end of the year. He says, that's way too much for him. So for years he kept saying no, so I didn't do it. So Bishop Malesic put together that pastoral letter, and in it says, hey, I have some faith sharing sessions. So I proposed it to him. He said, okay, you can do it now. The obedience, I was paying attention to what he wanted to do because he's in charge of this place, right? So I wouldn't call another meeting over at St. Gabe's or something because he wouldn't let me do it here. You get the idea? But that's what St. Teresa wants that to happen. All right. In this particular map, you're going to see there's three sections of it. Rooms 1, 2, and 3 are what we call the purgative. You're purging the things that are bad out of you. Sounds like us, right? All right? So the purgative part of it is these 3 rooms. Then you get through the dark night of the senses. Rooms 4 and 5 are what they call illuminative. You have this light that you can figure out that God resides there. You're getting close. You're doing well. The interior castle 6 and 7 is where God resides. Room 6, you are betrothed to God. Room 7, you're married to God. You are in union with God. All right, so it's called the unitive. 6 and 7 are called the unitive. You're going to see this. I'm going to hand a different one in a little bit. It's not a straight line. It sounds really good going up, right? It's not a straight line. You can run around at number 1 for years and years and years, or number 2, or you can bounce between 1 and 2 and jump up to 3 once in a while. Nothing is straight. So the arrows don't mean it's a one-way street, all right? The whole idea is to get to the center. Now, here's the difference between this map and St. John of the Cross. He looked at it as the climbing of Mount Carmel. It's a step up the mountain. So if everybody ever seen pictures of Mount Fuji, that's a distorted Mount Fuji. I took a picture and I made it look really weird because it was too small for me to get all 7 steps in. So I made it look good, and I thought, hey, that's not a bad mountain. So what John of the Cross talks about is he's really quick about, oh yeah, you get up to the dark night of the senses, and he skips over those sessions. Talks about some of the things you need to do to get to dark night of senses, and then he talks about that forever. Then you work your way up. Now, this is kind of like the what they call a base camp. You're sitting here for a while, and then you work your way up to the next base camp before you work your way up to God. God's at the top of the mountain. So he's always talking about steps going up or climbing a mountain versus Teresa talking about getting to the center of the thing. So you can see how they both had different views on it, but they both work together. Oh, I got to throw this out too. Christian mysticism, by the way, is not for everybody. There's a lot of priests and people in the Catholic Church that do not want to recognize Christian mysticism. It's in the catechism, but they don't want to do that. Faith, all right, so theology, when you're studying theology, the study of theology is faith seeking understanding. Faith seeking understanding. So that's theology. The problem with that in Christian mysticism is when you get up here, your intellect and your understanding don't help you at all. It gets in your way of being one with God's will. Think about that. Remember that big thing, everything here is putrid compared to it? If we're going to be in union with God, you've got to give everything up. And Christian mysticism was not understanding. I have all the understanding I need. I don't need. Think about it this way. If you have faith, it means you don't know what's going to come up, right? When you discover something, you now have intellect and you don't need faith. Right? Then you have memory. Where does memory come from? You sit there and have all these experiences, right? Well, you don't need hope if you have the memories to work off of because it's in the past. It's not the future. Hope is about the future. And if you have your will, you don't have love. If you have love, it's God's will. So intellect, memory, and will. We're going to talk about this next week. But when you get up to the top of that mountain, when you get to the center of that thing, faith, hope, and love are much more important than intellect and understanding and will and memory. And this sounds pretty heavy-duty stuff, right? But the whole idea is you got to start thinking differently as far as what do I need to do. So the Mount Carmel is a bunch of stuff. He calls it the 7 steps. Go ahead. That's my 7? Okay. He talks about going up steps to get to the top of Mount Carmel. The thing that we do is, if anybody's ever gone hiking up mountains and stuff, you get up so high, it's like, I've had enough. What do? You come back down, right? So a lot of times when people are changing, they take a step up, but they leave their toe on the step that they just came from. It's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Right? And that's what both of them talk about it. You got, working your way up is not one of these deals where it's straight shot up. You're constantly going up and down based upon what the situations are for you. All right?
Ed,
Yes?
what did you say number 5 was? I forgot.
We're going to cover it. I'll give it right now.
Oh, okay.
So the first one is 1, 2, and 3 in the Dark Knight of Senses are called purgative. All right? Purgative is just where we sit there and we want to discipline our bodies. We want to take this beast and sit there and say, no, I'm in charge. You're not in charge of me. Because what is selfishness? Selfishness is all about me. If you discipline your body, all right, purgative is to sit there and you're disciplining your body, you're going to help get that body to behave the way you want to have. Then you can integrate, you can become something more, you have virtue. So that's what it's about. So understanding what the damage is, beginning, advancing, and relational, disciplining the body, the intellect, and the will. I don't know about you, but science taught me a lot about cause and effect. That's my life. I'm always looking for what's causing this and the effect of happening. This is the effect, what was the cause? Drives her crazy, but it drives me crazy too because I'm trying to figure it out. The people that are in the purgative phase will attend Mass and vocal prayer. They have scripture sacraments and liturgy. There are what we call pray, pay, and obey Catholics. And there are people that want to remain in control, but they want strict rules for everybody else. All right? We all know that they exist out there. So that's the purgative part of it. This is the area where you get to choose whether you integrate or disintegrate. That's why I spent so much time on the first 2 days talking about it. All right? The second phase is called the illuminative. The illuminative is where you learn to conform to God's will. Ouch. What is God's will? You learn that when you get through the dark night of the senses. What's God's will? Okay, I've got to surrender. I have to surrender to what God's doing for me. If I surrender to what God's doing for me, it's God's will. It's not my will anymore. And the illuminative is where you start to make that transformation. You want to be like God. You want to be with God. You respond to God by taking an active role. I said, theology is faith-seeking understanding, right? Faith, you can measure your faith. what is your response to the things God's showing you? If you sit there and say, I don't need that, you have a negative response to faith. If you say, no, I want to do that, it's a positive response to faith. If your requirement is to get into the illuminative phase, our faith, you're probably paying attention to God and trying to do more about it. Does that make sense? So your faith, hope, and love are going to drive you through all this stuff. There's several things that make points of. All right. Unitive is one of the coolest ones, but because it's union with God. You talk about intimate union with God's will, betrothal, and intimate marriage. God has participation in God's timetable. God by participation on God's timetable. Everything that happens in 4, 5, 6, and 7 is on God's timetable, not on ours. You can't force any of those steps to get through those mansions. It's the surrender. He will pull you into Him when He knows you're ready. Huh. That's what makes it difficult for us, because what have we done our whole life? Took control of stuff, right? We're going to get this. We're going to get that mortgage. We're going to pay for it. We're going to get all the kids through school. We're going to do it, right? We force all the issues. And now we're sitting there saying, when you want to get to God, you got to give everything up. You wonder why nobody wants to read about mystics, right? But go back to that thing. Think of what God is, what heaven is, and how to be in union with that wonderful thing. All you have to do is, He wants you to be a part of God. But it's God's will because He's perfect and you're imperfect. That's what this is about. Right? Okay. So today, let's do this. Today we're going to talk about rooms 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to start the dark night of the senses. We've only got a half hour to do it, so this could be interesting. All right. The first thing is people that are outside the castle. Here, let me do this. Pass it that way. This is a bigger version of that map, so if you want to look at it. People outside the castle have this battle going on within them about whether to integrate or to disintegrate. Am I selfish because everybody's picking on me, or am I going to go and try to integrate? All right? So people outside the castle, people roaming outside of this thing, are the non-practicing believers. Non-practicing believers. That group is getting bigger and bigger. Atheists and agnostics. Other religions might be out there, but some of them are actually inside the first 3 rooms or mansions as well. So the outside the castle part are people that are typically absorbed in world affairs. Let me see if I can do this. People that are outside the court are absorbed in world affairs and desire worldly goods. Remember that pleasure thing? They want what they got? They're preoccupied, so the soul prays infrequently, if at all. And where their treasure resides is where their heart is, what their actions are. They can tell you. Like, a lot of these protesters are saying they're professional protesters. Well, those are their actions. Is it a job, or are they doing this because they want to irritate somebody? I don't know. But their actions are telling us something about their spirituality, right? And everybody's actions tell us about their spirituality. All right. Souls in the outer court are unbelief, they lack trust, they feel like if they walk into the castle that their freedom is going to be restricted. What happens is God gets their attention through some crisis. It could be somebody going to the hospital. It could be somebody dying. It could be some catastrophic gambling thing or drug addiction, or you know what I mean? Some way there's a crisis that happens, and all of a sudden they get this curiosity going, and maybe a little bit reserved about it. They'll walk in. When they start to hear, speak, and do all that stuff, they start to think, is this really worth it? So what's the devil doing? Yeah, you don't want this. This is not for you, right? They're uncertain about prayer and worship, and a lot of times they're willing to abandon ship and leave the whole thing. So the people that are outside, entering Mansion 1, coming from the outside, don't necessarily do it. When they get into Mansion 1, nothing is more important than the humility to seek God. That's what they need to have. It's about the truth about God. They acknowledge sinfulness and the sources to find mercy. That's what they want to be doing, but they don't know how to do it. They can't deny the exterior sensual world of this thing. They want to back out and have all the senses, all the things that they were doing, all that sensual stuff that we talked about, senses that will get you excited. All right? And then St. John, Mary cannot destroy the first head of the, or many cannot destroy the first head of the beast. St. John of the Cross talks about each room, when you go to the mansion, is the seven-headed beast in the book of Revelations. And every room, you chop a head off of the beast by beating it. Many people can't do that because they want those sensual things that they have to hold on to. What makes you happy? Can I give up ice cream? Right? Something's driving people to stay in that area, the sensual stuff, and that's the head of the beast John's talking about. All right, mansion 1. Here's another handout for everybody. All right, prayer is the gateway. There's a gate and your way through the entire castle. What you didn't hand out here is the levels of prayer for each of the different sections, of purgative, illuminative, and unitive. So you're working your way through the 7, and there's different prayers for each one of them. The ones that we're going to talk about, because we're all in this group number 1, 2, and 3, we have vocal prayer. We know what that is, right? We said at the beginning with it. Meditation. How many people pray the rosary and meditate on the mysteries and stuff, right? How many people pray and have meditation? Effective prayer. You bring meditation to a head with the heart. You're sitting there saying, oh, that felt good. I know I got something out of this prayer today, right? And a acquired recollection. A simple gazing upon a cross or the Eucharist or something. You're just sitting and gazing. You don't think anything. Those are the purgative prayers. And that's what we all do, right? That's why I think we're all in room 1, 2, and 3. Because if you go into room 4, you don't use these prayers. All right? Contemplation is the first one that they're going to use. And you're going to see that on the list that you got going around. You'll see unitive and you're going to see the illuminative. There's different prayers on there. God starts to take care of what your prayer looks like. And it's kind of neat when you're into number 3 and you're doing all this meditation and stuff, and it gets dry. It's like something's wrong. John of the Cross has like sections on this whole thing. When people start to get like dry from their meditation, it's telling them they should start thinking about some contemplation where God can actually break into their life. But now you have to learn to do contemplation. You have to figure out how to do it. He's got several chapters on how to do contemplation. It's really kind of cool. So prayer is what you do in mansion 1 to stay there. Prayer 2 is called a transitional mansion. There's uncertain about whether it's important to move up. They're not committed. God speaks to them through virtuous people preaching, spiritual readings, illness, suffering. God gets your attention somehow through somebody else. We struggle with the concept of sin in this room, easily tempted by visions and senses in this world, but God is patient and loving and merciful. He wants you to stay in the mansions. He doesn't want you leaving. So He'll work on you little by little, change water torture, one drop at a time. So that's what He's going to do there. This is the room that you get the basic understanding. Your faith reveals what you're doing wrong, your actions. Your memory reveals your transient natures of things. Your will inclines the soul to love, but you don't know how to do it quite well. Spiritual progress is measured by your capability to follow God's will. In Mansion 2, you can't do that real well, but you know there's something else out there because of those transcendent desires, right? And that's the whole idea, is can you get any better? So that Mansion 2 is kind of like He's got a hook in you and He's pulling you in. Yeah, there's more here, and they're starting to figure it out. Start to understand about the Lord calling them, realize Jesus' cross, and their cross, and they have a cross as well. And even after the fall, God can make good of it. It's absurd to think that we can enter heaven without first entering our own souls, without getting to know ourselves and reflecting upon the wretchedness of our nature. The wretchedness of our nature is the beast wants to be fed. Are you feeding it, or are you done doing something to manage it? That's what rooms 1 and 2 are. Mansions 1 and 2. Does that make sense? Okay. The thing that gets in the way is sin. And we can talk about this in RCIA a lot. God wants all of you. He doesn't want part of you. So what happens is sin and God are are mutually exclusive. They don't overlap anything. God will take care of you. He'll have to be in your bios. He keeps you worried. He keeps you alive. But when you sin, you put this blanket over your Zoe in you, and you can't get any graces in. All right? And that's where God and us and sin is mutually exclusive. He will not work through sin to get to your Zoe. So you have to find a way to open that up, getting rid of your sin, which is a contrite soul, right? A contrite heart. That's what happens with it. All right, let's go to room 3. I want to get through this stuff because this is really cool. When you're in room 3, this is where we hope everybody in RCI lands up when we're all done. Prayer, Scripture, and the sacraments are a part of their life. That's the foundation for room 3. If you do those 3 things, you're in room 3. Which is really kind of easy to do, right? Not really. People outside the court sit there and make fun of you if you do all 3 of those. But that's where you are in room 3. So if you were doing these 3 things routinely, you're in room 3. Sound good? Father Bruce told us, people in Mansion 3 will get to heaven. Via the penalty box, via some other mechanism, people in Mansion 3 will get to heaven. How's that? Makes you feel good, right? The problem is when you're in room 3, and things start going crazy, and you start getting doubts about stuff, you go to room 2s and room 1 and say, I don't need this anymore, and all of a sudden, right? So you got to reside in room 3 when you're dead. How does that sound? Pretty awful, right? We talked about faith is one of those transcendent things. You cannot get faith. I mean, you cannot get it for yourself. God has to give it to you. He gives you the faith. He starts making himself known to you. You start to realize it's what's there. Faith is the most important thing for rooms 4, 5, 6, and 7. In room 3, you have faith in you. That's what's there. Did you break it open and start using it? Do you have faith when you get that Eucharist, when you go up to the communion, you get the Eucharist, do you have faith that that's really Christ there? Or does it look like a piece of bread to you? Over 50% of Catholics say it's just a piece of bread. Not talking other Protestants who believe that completely. Do you have faith that something's there outside of what you are? You're saying that's what it is. Do you believe it or not? Okay? The pupil, the eye of the intellect is faith. Why does that happen? You have faith in something, so you start to investigate why. And then when you figure it out, you have the intellect. You don't need faith anymore. So then your faith says, go for more. And you keep feeding yourself, right? So, what are we doing? We're working our way up from room 1 up to 2, 3, and you now have some faith. But you're still letting all your senses rule what you're doing. Right? Now you have to figure out to go through the dark night of the senses and stuff to get rid of all those things that are holding you back. Room 3, understand what fear of the Lord means. Desire not to offend God, desire to carry out God's will. You try to live a virtuous life and get something done. I mean, I know when people in room 3, they will do a lot of neat stuff. They'll get things done for other people. That's perfect Mansion 3 stuff. They avoid even venial sins, do penance, they do charitable acts. They struggle to allow, but they'll struggle to allow God to take over their life. Thoughts, fantasies, memories, the interior senses rise up regularly, carrying the soul back to Mansion 1. If you start to get frustrated with your faith, if you start getting frustrated with the church, you start getting frustrated with stuff, you have a tendency to work your way back down to Mansion 1, and even maybe go outside of it, under the courtyard again. So the whole idea is you want to have a more and more mature life as you go. Spirituality there.
It's like, sorry, you have to keep going back home.
Oh.
You have to keep going back to the
Yeah.
one.
If you mess up, and God knows where you're at, He's going to keep pulling you up. But you get to pick when you're going to go backwards. Remember that integrate, disintegrate? You make the choice. So are you going to work backwards for a while, then try to go up again? I don't know, climbing a mountain, going up and down, it's going to be pretty hard. Right? All right, so this is in the mid-1800s. There was a priest over in Eastern Europe. His name was Dr. Alex Schmemelman. He came up with the term Mr. and Mrs. Murphy reside in room 3, mansion 3. And people get offended by this, but it's so true. Mr. and Mrs. Murphy are the people that are very virtuous and tending, in control, driven to accomplish good works. They're well-ordered, comfortable lives. They earn this life. I've earned this. This is mine. I can keep it. Right? They dare not go forward. They lack humility. They're proud, so they tend to not grow spiritually. They brood over their woes and become restless when they're suffering. Now tell me where are Mr. and Mrs. Murphys? I'm sorry. People do that all the time. They're talking about their aches and pains all the time. They're talking about, there's no picking up your cross and following me type of thing, right? And we're going to hear that more and more as we go on. Mr. and Mrs. Murphy is a real term that they use in the spirituality classes in the seminary. And when we were in class, there were several women in the class that were taking it for, they were like pastoral associates and stuff. They were going for training for that. There was a lady that sat there and went up to Father Lewis and sat there and said, I'm a Mrs. Murphy and I ain't changing. This is what I'm going to do. I said, okay. But she recognized it and knew what her limitations were. And it meant that she wasn't ready to move on, and God's going to keep working on her to get her attention, which is mortality, right? But she at least knew it at that point that that's what it was. Most of us are Mr. and Mrs. Murphys. Just throwing it out there. All right. So the rich young man again. Then Jesus said to his disciples, Amen, I say to you, it will be harder for one of you who is rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. Again, I say to you, it is easier for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for one who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. It's going to be easier. So think of room 3 again. I'm happy with where I'm at. Everything's going well. I don't need to get any better. This one bothers me. Because the more you got, the more is expected of you. That one is like that. So, does everybody know what the eye of the needle is?
I was going to ask that question.
All right.
I know what it is, but I
Okay.
was wondering if everybody knew.
In the city of Jerusalem, it's all gated walls and so forth, and they had the front gate going up and down. And during the night, somebody was on their trip, and they were trying to get in at night when the gate was up. They had the eye of the needle, which was a very small entryway. They would have to take their camels, take everything off of the camels. The camel would get on his knees and they would pull it through the eye of the needle to get into the city. It would be easier for the camel to get through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to get into heaven. What do you have to do to get through the eye of the needle? You got to take all the baggage off. All right? All the baggage. Humility. What is the baggage? That's the $1 million question, right? What is the baggage that I'll carry? Okay, the catechism again. If you have a catechism, 2547. The Lord grieves over the rich because they find their consolation in abundance of good. Let the proud seek and love earthly kingdoms, but blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. See the difference? If you're rich with all the sensual things going on and all the things that you have in this world, you're not part of the poor in spirit. Abandonment to the providence of the Father in heaven frees us from anxiety about tomorrow. Trusting God is a preparation for the blessedness of the poor. They shall see God. That's in catechism. So tab and do whatever to give you some feedback on what's there. All right? Okay. Catch up with what just a week. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention something. We were talking about Mr. and Mrs. Murphy. St. Teresa put all those characteristics together, and Alexander Spellman put together the name Mr. and Mrs. Murphy to apply what St. Teresa had said. So it wasn't like he said those were the way people were. Here's some other traits for Mr. and Mrs. Murphy. They see obstacles everywhere and disregard advice. They know better. They think they are capable of teaching others. And I read that and I thought, ouch. I'm standing up here trying to teach you about what they're saying, and I feel like Mr. Murphy. They brood over their woes. They decide it's suffering for God's sake, but then they'll tout that they're suffering for God's sake. All right, so anyway, that was what the part of it is. Oh, by the way, when you're in room 3, the restlessness you feel from being in room 3, when things aren't quite going the way you want, is the devil getting and poking you. You're not getting what you want. Time to go out and get that ice cream. Go out and get that beer. You're good. Go gamble for a while. Go to the sports. It's sitting there saying, feed the beast. The restlessness is there. He's trying to get you to feed the beast. And God allows it because He wants you to grow, integrate, and you've got to fight against the beast. Right? Okay. The whole idea is practice the virtues, surrender to God's will, thy will be done. Practice humility, which is the ointment for our wounds. You know what the criteria is for humility now, so it makes it harder. Without self-renunciation, advancing is arduous and oppressive. It's very difficult. You cannot do it if you don't renounce yourself. If you don't control the beast. The main objective is increasing love. Don't expect or desire spiritual constellations of vision. If you start praying that you want to see the face of Jesus in others, it took me 2 years. And I was shocked when it happened because I was not expecting it, and I saw it. It's God's timetable. He'll get a hold of you when He wants you to see something like that. Even if it's just something Mother Teresa says, look for the face of God in others when you're helping them. That's a wonderful prayer to get you out of this doldrums, and you'll know this stuff. Prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. We do that for Advent and Lent. It's the start of asceticism. Asceticism is to make the beast do what you want. That's why we do prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Sanctity has to do with gratitude. The first obstacle is the senses. So this is how it looks in reality. There's God out there, and then there's self. And here's all the baggage you got. You have power, vanity, anger, money, comfort, fame, sex, control. What is it that's holding you back? What are the baggage that you have at the eye of the needle? If that really is God out there, and we're allowed to join Him, and the only thing keeping us back are all these things, isn't it worth trying? Think about all that heaven stuff we talked about earlier, if you believe me. Right? And this is the one, got to serve somebody. I put this up here because it was right after I did that other slide that Father gave us talk about, Bob Dylan talking about, got to serve somebody. The whole idea is you're going to serve somebody. It could be the Lord, it could be the devil, whatever. But you're going to serve somebody. You either get rid of all this stuff and serve God, or you keep serving yourself with the things that you like to hang on to. So I added this slide. It's just Father Timism. Okay, we got 10 minutes. I'm going to start going into the dark night of the senses. So all us Mr. and Mrs. Murphys have an outlet. Not an easy one, but it's a pretty cool one. The dark night of the senses is when you have privation and purgation of attachments and sensual desires. You sit there and say, I don't need this for my body. I'm going to do something better for somebody else. I'm going to start getting rid of those things that are bothering me, that keep me where I'm at. What habits do I have? What things do I do wrong? I mean, you can talk to your spouse and they can probably give you a list longer than what you have, right? It's some way to go through and figure this out. In the purgation, this is John the Cross, in the purgation, the devil flees away. When you get through the senses, think about it this way. What is it that the devil constantly tempts us with? The things that feed the beast. Oh, that was a bad game. Have another drink. Right? Go out and have a party with your friends. You don't need to do dishes. You don't need to do your son's homework with them. Right? The devil works through the senses. So the devil flees. He doesn't give up, but he flees from going after your senses because you have them in control and you are not moving up to room 4. But the dark night of the senses is pretty ugly. It talks about it has a power over a soul only when it's attached to things corporal and temporal. I let you know, corporal means it affects the senses. Temporal means it's a very short time period. Sounds like the senses part of it for happiness, right? Level 1, pleasure. Right? It wants us to feel good, so we stay there. If we're winning, it makes us want to feel more of that, right? I think of Tom Brady. Tom Brady still wants to play quarterback and win another Super Bowl. You see what they're doing? He's being played by the devil with that stuff. The dark night of the senses is mortification of desire. Desire feeds the senses. And need to purge those desires for pleasure in all things except God. Here's the statement. God wants all of you. He doesn't want you with anything, any baggage, any kind of anything. Nothing. He wants all of you. You're going to see that all next week. Over and over and over. We can't get that through our heads, but that's where the saints say you get the vision of God when you do that. You see bliss. You have all that peace. You have the highest amount of happiness you're ever going to have when you give all this stuff up. And God is the center of what you're doing rather than the beast. And that's what the dark night of senses are. You're purging all that stuff out. How we doing, right? So, this is what happened. Yeah.
One of the, for many here, it's something that I know I'm dealing with is, you have to remember, in my case, my wife passed away, and many, for a number of years, can't wait to see her.
Right?
That's a distraction. It's not about I can't wait to see my wife. I can't wait to see God.
Right.
My wife is that's the gift he gives me when I get there, maybe. And I don't even know if he's going to give that there. As you were talking, who knows what that looks like?
God said this, he said when, who's going to be married to, when that one woman was, she had 7 husbands or something, which one's going to be her husband when she gets to heaven? He said, nobody. You're going to want to be one with God, because that's the whole idea of God, is he wants all of us to be with him. It's not about us and Jesus. It's about all of us making it there. And we're all going to want to be together with all of us. It's not about your spouse.
I think there's a passage in one of the Gospels that touches on what I just talked about.
And it brings you back to, in this world, how we perceive things, the best thing in our life, to imagine you dying and thinking that you're going to see a love more than the love you had for your wife. Like that, it's insurmountable. Like, how do you even, you miss your parents when they go, you miss a child who has died. You don't think you could love more than that. And when you see the face of God, it's beyond that.
Yeah, everything is.
Who wouldn't want to strive for that?
One of the things that they say happens is that, if you've read the near-death experiences, they talk about when you die, once you make it through the gauntlet, supposedly there's a gauntlet. The first thing that happens is you see darkness. And if you believe in Mary and you're saying the rosary a lot, she comes and helps you through the darkness and leads you to Jesus. But on the way, when you get into the light, all those people you love are going to be there cheering you on. And they said people that you don't even remember from little kids that you made a huge difference and didn't even know it are going to be there cheering you on. But it's all about you meeting Jesus, and they're all cheering you on about you're going to be part of the group now. That's what it's going to look like. So yeah, you're going to see your wife again, but it's going to be like, see you later, dear. I got better things to do. Right?
It's going to be late for dinner.
That's what I told my husband.
That looks better to me. But that's the whole idea of the dark night of the senses, get you ready for that. Dark night of the senses, advancing in spirituality. God alone must be the object of your search and attainment. You're going to hear that a lot next week. The choiceless choice when the soul can do nothing but surrender. You can't make it through the night of the senses without God's help. You can give all that stuff up and then he'll pull you into room 4. And everything from room 4 is about God's timetable. And it's a lot longer than rooms 1, 2, and 3. So think how old you are now and how hard it's going to be to get through 4, 5, 6, and 7, right? Surrender, absolute emptiness of self, to be filled with God's perfection to make us whole. Making 2 wills into 1. God's will is all that's needed because God is perfect and God's going to know better what He needs for you than you do. So why do we keep resisting perfection? Why do we keep resisting perfection? You gonna say something there? No, I'm just thinking. The soul is incapable of remedying spiritual brokenness. Only God can help us do that. We have to work through it with the Zoe part of it. Okay. Here's the homework for next week. You have it in your handout too. Is there something in your life that taken away from you might make you wince? Is there something that preoccupies your mind and heart so much that it obscures your devotion to the Lord? If so, sit quietly before the Lord and picture yourself placing it into Jesus' hands. If this isn't easy, know that He is patient. Just give Him as much as you can. He will always meet you in the act of surrender and fill whatever space you have opened up in your heart. St. John of the Cross once said, to possess everything, desire to possess nothing. So let Jesus give you everything. It's very self. You see where we're going with this? So we're all in room 1, 2, and 3. There's no doubt about it. When you go to Mass on Sunday and watch the people around you, everybody's like, that was a long homily. Oh, yeah. Oh, you see that person how they're dressed? They shouldn't have been dressed like that. What's going on in the liturgy is not about what's on the altar, which is all about Jesus, which is all about God's relationship with us. We forgot how to take care of that stuff. Why? Because the senses, sight, taste, feel, are more important to us, and it's the same old thing. But it isn't. It's not the same old thing. And that's what the 5th week's going to be about. How do we take the things of this spirituality and apply it to liturgy and the sacraments and the mysteries? And that's what we're going to talk about. Okay? All right. Day 4, where is homework? Where are you on the roadmap? Pretty easy one. Here's another handout for you. I told you I'd give you a handout from St. Catherine of Siena. Here's this. This is my favorite section in the book. She talks about the bridge that Jesus made to get over the river of sin. It's really a cool story. So I hope you enjoy it. Hack it up, highlight it, tab it, do whatever you want with it. It's all yours. Maybe you can buy it if you can buy the book. It's a wonderful book. So read that one. Now here's the other thing I want you to do. The last one's the most fun because you're all going to be watching TV sometime. Even if you're watching this in World Series. Watch TV and know how everything, especially commercials, target self-love. You're getting fed all the time by that TV telling you it's all about you. As Whitney Houston said, yours is my first love. That's what John Lennon sang about in rebuttal to Bob Dylan. Okay? So watch the commercials and just keep tabs. Oh yeah, look what they're going after. Oh, look what they're going after. If you like to scroll around in the tabloids on the internet, if you like to sit there and just look through Facebook, look to see how much stuff is about self-love. I want to know that people are looking at me and saying, oh yeah, you're doing a good job. That's self-love. It's not sitting there trying to be part of a community. You want just approval all the time, right? All right, the last one is St. Clare, who was a contemporary with St. Francis of Assisi, reflects on the 4 steps of prayer. Gaze, consider, contemplate, and imitate. St. Anthony of Padua spoke of prayer as a friendly conversation with the Lord. I want you to take time, consider, contemplate, and imitate Jesus, even if it's only for one brief moment. So when you go to church before Mass starts, look at the tabernacle and gaze at it, and remember what's in there. And take what's faith is in you and sit there and say, yeah, I have faith. That's really Jesus. If that's really Jesus, you should be on your knees. You should be almost prostrate on the ground, right? Because it's Jesus. So try this. If you go to Adoration on Fridays, try this. Just gaze and think about it. Contemplate means to let everything go in your head. It's just Jesus. That's it. All right? And if you start contemplating, you're moving into room 5, which is what we'll cover next week. How do we do? All right? We're going to go over this. We're going to go over this whole thing with Dark Night of the Senses again next week, because there's a lot there. I want to break it open a little bit more, make sure you heard stuff. How many people have ever heard of the Surrender Novena? People in RCIA, I gave them the sheets. All right? Remember that? Laudate, the app that's there. You go to prayers, and the Surrender Novena is there. It's a short 5-minute prayer you say, and for 9 straight days. If you get a chance to start it now, you'll be on day 7 when you come back next week. Try it. Tell me what you think. All right? Oh, Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything. Rooms 5, 6, 7, and 8. So practice that novena and just see how it goes. And if you don't worry about the mechanics, just try it. All right, closing prayers by St. Francis Xavier. Are we, everybody okay? Today, I knew today was going to be really packed, because there's so much stuff that they talk about. I was afraid it was going to come. All right. Your Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Loving Jesus, I enclose myself in you and surrender myself completely in your loving heart. Enlighten my mind with the ray of your light. Move my heart and soul and make me do whatever pleases you and is for your greater glory. Jesus, I love you so much, but I am so weak that in my ignorance and sinfulness, I still do not know how to correspond, even partially, to all the special graces and loving tenderness with which you surround me. I will think of you and rest in you, my beloved Jesus. Behold your servant. Do with me whatever you want. Amen.
See you next week.